Hello, hola, bonjour. Welcome to Oye Dimelo Cinema Club. My name is El Don Dino. I'll be your host tonight. And with me, we have Jason Eccles, Steve Tess, El Profesor. And joining us tonight, we have Marino. Watch, laugh, cry. All right, so I got to pick the movie for this week, and I decided to pick a silent movie, Harold Lloyd, um, Safety Last. I haven't. I've seen a lot of silent films before, and mainly, Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, Harold and Lloyd, but haven't Harold and Laurel and Hardy. Sorry, Laurel and Hardy. But I hadn't really seen many, if any, of Harold Lloyd's movies. But I've seen a bunch of documentaries on him and docuseries. But it was always kind of hard to find his films. One of the reasons that I found out in the last kind of docu that I saw of him is he actually owned all his movies, which wasn't the case, especially back then. The studios were owned everything. Treated like the Three Stooges, everyone like really badly. But Harold Lloyd owning all his material, all his footage, and so when TVs and stuff like that, and that's where they started putting Three Stooges and Laurel and Hardy, he wouldn't just kind of like sell the his rights cheaply. So they didn't. They kind of disappeared for a long time, and so it hasn't been until like recently or after his passing that the state finally started releasing his films again and stuff like that, or it was just harder to get a hold of. Anyway, that's why I decided to go with one of his films, and this one is pretty. It has some of his most like epic stunts and very well known, and we've seen a lot of these stunts kind of redone in either cartoons or modern movies. So yeah, that's why I picked Safety Last and first time watching it. And now I'll throw it to you guys for first impressions. And let's start with El Profesor. What did you
So,
think?
man, I got to be honest. Tropes Last should be the name of this movie because so many things that he does in this movie I've seen in so many movies, and I don't know if they were ever done before. I doubt it based on when this movie was made. But so many things in the movie I feel like I've seen before. Like I was thinking Doc Brown the entire time he's on the clock. There were so many set devices where someone's explaining while someone's back's turned something else, and they're hiding something and they're lying and almost getting caught in the lie, but not getting caught in the lie. There's danger on purpose, and people think it's like just acting, but really, like, is the guy's in actual danger, and people are like celebrating the danger. All of those things keep coming up in movies. And as I was watching this movie, I was wondering if it was the first occurrence of this movie, so or of those kinds of tropes. So for me, this was a very fun movie. I haven't seen a ton of silent movies. I've seen some Charlie Chaplin. But this for me was a really good experience. And again, like, I opened me up to a lot of things. It made me think of a lot of other movies. Like a lot of other movies have paid homage to Harold Lloyd, I would imagine.
Awesome. Steve Des, what about you?
What about me? So yeah, first time watching this film, and I've never came across from it before, never heard of it before. But I've been familiar with the dude. I don't know how, when, where. Maybe in passing, maybe some clips, B-roll, maybe in the YouTube video. I don't know how, but I did watch, like, I seen his image before. Just like Professor, I've watched primarily like Chaplin when it comes to like silent films. So I'm not exposed to as many other people, but just looking at it was like, wow. Like I just kept thinking of like, this must be super difficult to make, specifically for the stunts. Because there's so many things going on that it's like you have to like prep so many things in the set in order to like make everything be successful. And then again, I was like, did they rehearse how many times? I just started like having just all these questions. And one of the moments that honestly, and I wouldn't think like a movie from the 1920s will make me cringe so hard, but like when he's climbing and he's getting attacked by birds, I absolutely lost it. I was like, if that was me, like that's it. That's a wrap. Like, um, I just got killed by birds because those birds were ruthless. But yeah, those are my first impressions.
It was a crossover movie from Birds and Harold Lloyd. I'm just like
It's
maybe
got
that's how Birds got going. It just happened to be food falling on someone, and they just kind of attacked, and it just kind of rolled over into the other movie. All right, Jason Eccles. What about you, Senor?
why don't you jump to Marina real quick? I gotta do something really, really quick.
All right, Marina. How
This.
about
I thought
you?
I had more
What?
time.
Oh,
So I
okay.
thought I had more time. This um was a true test of like how much I love cinema. I was very it took me a second to get focused. I'm not used to a lot of silent films. I usually don't watch very male dominant films either. Um, so when it first came in and I saw like the rope and it like alluded to the fact that like he was gonna get hung and then there was like it was a lot going on in the beginning. But if once I got past that, I really started to fall in love with like how much he loved how much he loved that girl to where he wanted to like make this money and like send for her. But I definitely I definitely was like really nervous for him when he was going up the building. And like as Steve said about the birds, the rope, everything. I was like, why are my palms sweating this much? I didn't even know I was that invested into this man's getting to the top. But it was kind of cool. Like it was a test of like my attention. I feel like as a millennial, I'm on my phone a lot. And if you look down for too long, you missed half the movie. So I had to rewind a couple times because I was just like, "Oh shoot, what happened?" But once I like actually focused, like it's really cute how it was done. Only other silent films I've seen are like the ones that came on late night when there was nothing else to watch, and you're just laughing with your buddies watching TV. But actually focusing on a silent film was pretty cool for me, and I liked it.
Nice.
It's awesome. I'm
Very
really glad
cool.
to hear that.
And
I-
you,
I'm glad.
Jason?
I'm glad to hear that, Marina, because I know when I first told you what the movie was going to be, there's a little pushback. Marina was not excited about a black and white movie, nonetheless a silent film. Which that is a good segue for me because I kind of feel the same way generally. Like silent films are my least favorite genre. But I will say this. I don't have a problem generally with silent films that are comedies because comedies are kind of universal and most of it is like in silent films it's less like jokes and more like physical humor, which like will never get old because like the human physicality is always funny. People falling and pratfalls and all that stuff is always great. So my first impression of this movie is first off, this thing's 100 years old, so I didn't know what to expect. And I don't watch 100-year-old movie every day. Like I've probably seen less than a handful of 100-year-old films at any given time. So right off the bat, I was really interested in what this thing was going to be. I ended up seeing the HBO version, which was cleaned up really nice. Like it looked like, dare I say, almost like I mean, not a new movie, but like it was so clean and so polished, and it was so like the footage was so like nicely preserved that sometimes I forgot like I can't believe this thing's 100 years old because the cinematography is pretty good. There's more camera movement in this thing than most movies that were made even 10 years after it. Like a lot of those movies like pre 19, this is 23. A lot of the movies like before then that I've seen, there's really no camera movement. So this thing is kind of impressive in that way. And I will say that when this thing first starts off, with the hanging thing, I was like, whoa, what are we getting into? Like they're about to hang this dude. And then that gag, that joke, I'm like, oh, this thing started off with a really strong joke right off the bat, a really strong visual gag. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. And then immediately it goes into joke after joke after joke. I did get a little I did did get a little mad when I saw the black woman and her baby in this thing because I'm like, Dino, what did you do? What did you pull us into? And I was like, there better not be some racist thing that happens to this baby or I'm going to lose it. And luckily there wasn't. Luckily, there's actually 2 black people in this movie. I was surprised for a movie from 100 years ago, and nothing racist happened to them. So kudos, Harold Lloyd, just for that, for letting that happen.
So they were still in blackface, though, right? Or at least the
No.
woman, was she not kind of? I thought they dressed her up more like the mommy, the mammy character. No, at least there was feel like a close up.
That's just your own racism.
It could be.
Wait,
But
I don't know. It did see. I don't know. I gotta look that up now. Like,
no, they didn't look like they were in any kind of blackface. They just seemed like normal black people. I wasn't at all like offended. It happened, and it was totally fun.
A close up of her, and I was like, whoa.
I think she was just a dark skinned black woman with like not probably the greatest lighting from the 1920s.
I think we all might have some PTSD from Tropic Thunder from last week.
Yeah. Well, no,
that's
I'm
probably
glad you brought
one.
that. Oh, sorry, Jason. Go on. Were you done with your first impression?
No, I'm just in the first scene.
Okay.
So I'll skip ahead quite a bit. I thought it was pretty funny. There's a lot of like nice visual sight gags with him and the roommate, and then jumping into the department store. I was impressed with the street scenes because this was all shot in downtown LA. So it's like, oh snap, this is downtown LA from 100 years ago. That's really cool. Also, along with everybody else, and I'm glad you guys all said it and all had the same reaction. This thing is pretty impressive in building suspense because I was like sweaty palms too. Like I was really like kind of clutching my fist. Like, what's going to happen with this guy? I want this scene to be over. Because like, and not in a bad way, I just was so nervous he was going to fall off that building, man. It's like, how is this thing going to end? I know he's going to get to the top. And then something kind of occurred to me. When his girlfriend, when his fiance or whatever was at the top of the building, I was like, oh man, this is like the princess in the castle thing that we've seen like 100 billion times since. Now, I don't know if that was like always a thing, but this is definitely like a guy scaling a castle to get to the princess, right? There was that, and then the stunts. The stunt is pretty incredible. I mean, the stunt is the climbing the building, but the stunt is pretty incredible for 100 years ago. I mean, we've seen stuff like that before, with like Charlie Chaplin and the roller skating over the planks and whatnot. So immediately after watching this movie, I went into the behind the scenes stuff on YouTube to try to like gauge how they did the practical effect. And the funny thing about it is Harold Lloyd purposely wouldn't allow any photography on set while he was filming those scenes because it was a secret and he didn't want anybody else to know how he did it. So he ended up making a movie years later that had a similar sort of stunt, and he allowed cameras on there to sort of see how it was done. And then they've got like some digital, I'll put them in the group chat, but there's some animations to show how they did that stunt work. First impression of the movie, I really liked it. I actually laughed at some of it. Even some of the written gags. Even some of the written gags, I'm like, that's pretty well done. The Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, like that's actually a pretty good joke. So Harold Lloyd did a great job. The only other silent films I have seen that I've liked generally are comedies, usually Chaplin and usually Buster Keaton. So this is my first Harold Lloyd movie, and from what I understand, it was his most successful movie. I've seen that clock gag like in everything, just like you guys. Like that thing it's been in Jackie Chan movies, it's been in Back to the Future, like it's been in everything. So really cool stuff. I did enjoy the movie, and that was my first impression.
Awesome. Well, I want to say, another thing. There's a car commercial for the past few years or whatever that also has the clock gag. I don't know if it's black and white, but they were doing a bunch of kind of like old timey black and white references because they also had like the Buster Keaton and the barn falling, and it falls through the car and then it turns into color. And it was the same thing with the building and the clock. So maybe that's where the most recent kind of like clock gag. You guys probably saw that. It's like, where do I see it? Because it was playing like pretty much every day, that commercial. Um, yeah, I knew this was the climb in the building, and so at the beginning I'm like, he's behind bars. It seems like there's like a like a police and then blah blah blah, and the gags, the lettering gags already is like it was gonna be the last time he saw her or whatever. So you're already starting like, oh no, like they're already building the tension, and then sure enough, it's just like let's walk around, and that's the kind of thing that you have like Mel Brooks doing certain gags like that, the people that did Airplane, and it's just everything, and it started so quick, and I was like, if there's a frame, like every frame had the possibility for a gag, whether it was like the focus or not. I was like, they're gonna try and maybe throw in as much as possible. Um, yeah, and then the baby, like you see it, like, and I wonder, like, are we like this advanced 100 years now that we've overseen all these different gags? That back in 1923 when the movie came out, and you see the black lady set down her basket with a baby in front of his suitcase. Like I was like, oh boy, he's gonna take the baby, and and it's a really funny gag. But I wonder if, like in 1923, that was just like mind blowing for people. Just
You
like,
know, that's a really good question, Dino. I thought the same thing with some of the gags. Some of the gags that like you are obvious and know are coming. I was wondering, like, did audiences watching this for the first time, did they see those gags coming? And I'm going to say no, because
yeah,
people were probably exposed to way less entertainment in the 1920s. You know what I mean?
yeah. I
Less
mean,
movies for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. You had to work a whole year to get that nickel showing or dime, whatever it was back then. Um, I also wanted to point out. Oh crap! I wrote a bunch of stuff, but I can't remember this one. Boom, 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 boom. Anyway, so yeah, so this is the first time me watching and kind of felt the same way. And I mean, I'm glad you said the levels and kind of did it to like going up to get the princess. And it's like, what is it? Bruce Lee having to go up and fight his way. You have Raid Redemption. Like, you have like all these movies, clearly like all action fighting, but him just kind of scaling it. Um, I'm glad you brought that up, Jason. I'm gonna share another link of kind of them breaking down this movie or a little bit of his career. So the way that I understand from what I had seen is that it's played with perspective. So it's still up on a building that he's like scaling, but it's almost like there's some scaffolding somewhat below him. But he's still like on the roof of a building. It's just slightly it's in a distance. So that to me also is just mind blowing how they start playing around with that back then of just like the such a fun way of doing the perspective and stuff like that.
Yeah, it was all
Man,
about angles.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, think about Lord of the Rings. That's I feel like one of the last big movies that really took uh, advantage of playing with perspective, like dealing with Gandalf and the hobbits, and like building like carriages that was clearly, one was sitting way back, but Gandalf was in front, but it was in the same shot, but just because of the distance, it allows you to think like, oh, Hobbit are a certain size, and Gandalf is that. So it's nice that every now and then that is still being used. Some of those, I guess, just camera tricks. I wanted to point out with some of the jokes that you guys were talking about. I know Buster Keaton did it a lot. Harold Lloyd is also apparently one of the only silent film stars that made a good transition into sound. Where like Chaplin barely did it, and then he was kind of like, "I'm out," and they weren't able to find how to transition. Harold Lloyd actually kind of how you see all the visual gags that he was doing. He found new audio gags. So as simple as like sneezing, and in a sound film, at the same time that a horse is neighing, and so it, like for the audience, you hear it, and it's like it's supposed to be a sneeze, but it's a horse. So he was able to, like, as simple as that joke is, he was able to transition from silent to audio because he just found a whole bunch of new jokes to do with a use of audio. A lot of the silent stars, they could only see what the audience was seeing, right? So that's why the life in the movie of a 2D, they would play with that as well and perspective. So that's why there are scenes where you just don't see what's right off the camera, and neither does the star. And it's a similar thing. It's silent, but him talking, they're yelling at each other, and the other people aren't hearing because it's literally just what's in front of you is what their life kind of encompasses. And there's, a lot of cartoons, Looney Tunes, like you can see how these silent films just like were taken, and they used and reused all the gags in like all the Looney Tune cartoons and stuff like that. So yeah, it was my first time. I enjoyed it. I definitely am gonna little by little watch other Harold Lloyd movies for sure. Now I wanted to ask you guys, since we're talking about gags, do you guys have a favorite gag? And I guess because we talked about kind of like feeling like nervous and stuff like that, like one that you're like, oh man, like that gag is like just scared the shit out of me, and one that you were like, that gag was hilarious type of thing.
Yeah, I got one. The one that I thought was the most intriguing because it began the cringe factory, and not cringe in a bad way, just cringe where you're like, I sure hope this guy doesn't get in trouble. Is when he's working at the department store and his girlfriend decides to surprise him, and he's like, got to perpetuate this lie that he already starts. And he's like, yeah, I'm the boss or whatever. And then she's like inferring a lot too. She sees him come out of the general manager office. And then all those bits that happen with the buzzers and the general manager office, all that's really funny stuff. Like, honestly, I could see any comedian today pulling the same gags. And we have. We've seen it on every TV show from like, I don't know, like MASH to like Spin City. Like they've all sort of done this thing where someone's faking something to impress somebody.
Yeah.
So all that stuff is great, and then he hits all the buzzers, and everybody comes in. He pretends to be one of them, and it's like the whole time you're thinking like, oh, this guy's going to get caught. He's about to ruin everything. But I will say this: because of that, I also thought this guy was incredibly financially stupid because this dude did everything wrong. Like he didn't even pay his rent. He was buying jewelry for his girlfriend to impress her, and he was about to be homeless. You know what I mean? Like, come on, bro. That made me a little angry.
I knew I was watching it and thinking of you the whole time, Jason, because we've talked so much about like money and like dates and just like all this other thing of like how to impress. So the whole time I'm like, ooh, Jason is gonna have a field day with like his money use. And about editing, real quick to the money thing, the shot of like the food when he's like deciding if he's gonna get the chain or not, and it's like the very first time I was like, did they just do what I thought they did? And they did such a good job of the edit of like the disappearing dishes one at a time.
Oh,
Every time
I
he
love
puts
that
the
gag.
phone.
That bit was fantastic. Where it's like, yeah, he's paying for the thing, and all his food keeps disappearing because he has to impress it. That was amazing.
And
Very Looney Tunes.
they show like a POV of him where it gets kind of blurry for a split second, like a point
He's getting
POV
dizzy.
like shot in 1923 of just like, let me go blurry, I got no money, and then solution just gotta tighten the belt.
If you're not starving to buy me a necklace, I don't want it. Like I don't. Like,
Make it till you make it, baby, right? Oh man. And even the roommate, oh man, the roommate goes to like play the phonogram or whatever, and it's like, yeah, and then it goes like, oh, if we had more of things, I could have gotten more money. And he's like, I'm taking it, like, don't sell my stuff. All right,
That was a pretty cool roommate, all things considered. Like, I don't know whose record player or phonogram or whatever that who it belonged to. I guess it was his. The records probably belonged to the roommate, but like he was like just. I mean, I don't know how he expected it all to work out. To be honest with you, I mean, I guess that's the comedy of it, but it did work out. He got his $1,000 and he was able to marry his girlfriend. But it just seemed like the whole time, like in modern day, he would have gotten caught. There's no comedy that would have let him get away with that today. He would have had to have gotten caught, and the girlfriend would have either like loved him more or hated him for being an idiot. But something would have came of that. That just wouldn't have flown away.
We should try the coat trick with Rami. Let's just not pay our rent and see if he like bursts in and we're just hanging.
Oh,
I like that guy a lot.
The roommate was
and it's just so funny that it's like he was gonna sit down again, and the guy sat down, so he's like, "Let me knock real quick." And so the friend just like jumps in, and he's like, "All right, I can sit down, no problemo."
I kind of like how Harold Lloyd does that to everybody.
Yeah,
Like
He's
throughout the
constantly
movie,
doing things behind people's back in the movie.
yeah.
that's like that vaudevillian comedy.
Absolutely. I think that a lot of the best gags had a lot of people in them. Like the choreography of certain scenes, like where he gets everyone to duck in the dress shop. He's like, $50 on the ground. Everyone ducks down at the same time, pop back up. And the scene where they're getting on the trolley and he can't fit on the trolley with all the men. And then the trolley pulls away and he's holding on to the one guy that's not actually on the trolley. There was a lot of really good gags like that. But like that probably took some shots. You know, that's an easy shot to mess up where you have so many people involved in one, you know, an individual thing.
I know Steve was holding his
You about
hand.
to say something?
I was gonna say just to piggyback on what Professor said, the gag that when he's leaving in the beginning, that he's supposed to take the train and he ends up taking, you know,
the carriage.
Yeah.
the carriage, and yeah, like things like that are so. I'm sure it took like maybe a take or two, you know, to get just that one specifically.
Don't try the ambulance one today. I feel like I saw him do the ambulance. Like, what are you doing? Like, you don't got insurance? You're gonna get a huge bill. And then he keeps looking like, oh man, the timing on so much of it is, you know, works so well. Which clearly, when it was silent, they normally had someone yelling stuff. To go back to one of the gags that in the office, Jason, the general manager one, just the simple one of like winking at the secretary assistant, and he throws $1 in the trash, and then the guy's going out, and then he throws something else on the ground, and it's like, hey man, you forgot this one. So when the guy bends over, he takes his $1 back, and I was like, man,
I missed that because I was wondering where the guy was going through the garbage.
Yeah,
I was like, did I miss something? Yeah, let's just keep watching. But I didn't know. Oh.
You were looking at your phone and missed a visual gag, you know.
Yes.
And that Chappelle did a similar one in Half Baked when he takes the girl out on a date and he only has X amount of money. She's like, and ice cream and this and all that, and it starts losing money. And then there's like the beggar.
It's nice out. It's nice out. We should take a walk instead. You know, all the different things.
But then the guy begging has the and he's like, oh, I don't, and he looks in and it's a blind guy supposedly, so he sees that he has a bunch of money, so he like throws some change, but like steals a whole bunch of money, stuff like that. I feel like you said, Jason, so many newer things have just kind of taken a page right out of Harold Lloyd.
For sure.
I like that you can feel like the intensity despite it being silent, like kind of like in all the gags, like whether it was him getting accidentally across town, he has to get back. Like you just really felt his determination in each thing, which was, I think, I was nervous about, like just it not relating to the jokes, but I definitely felt the emotion, whether it was funny or nervousness.
Yeah, that's really interesting too, because a lot of times, even though like the human condition really hasn't changed very much in 100 years, like, everybody has to like work to make a living and all that. Like we get all that stuff. Like, after like the Industrial Revolution, I think it's all kind of been like the same worries and fears for all of us. So I think that's why this movie really hits on all cylinders, because like, yeah, man, like we all know what it means to like be late for work and then be out of work and you need your money real bad because like rent's due. So yeah, like in the movie does a really good job of like building that tension, because without us knowing like, oh yeah, he needs to impress this girl, rent's due, he's really hungry, like all those other gags and all that other like those stakes being so high, we never even get there. So that's a really good point.
The well, everyone's trying to impress someone. Everyone's like, oh, what's your job? Oh, I got like everyone has a different title they might say of what their job actually is. But the other one I was thinking was, she gets the letter and then she gets the chain and she shows it, I guess, her mom or her aunt or someone. And she's like, ooh, girl, you better go tie him down, that man with all that money in the big city. Like, I was just like, oh shit! Like, it's one of those friends. Like, Ben
That's
has
his
money,
wife.
tie him down.
That's his wife. Mildred is the girl in the movie is his actual wife.
Oh, really?
Yep. That is
Cool.
something
Very cool.
at the beginning.
So
Yeah.
I thought that was. Oh, go ahead, Marina.
I was gonna say, I actually just probably like the woman thinking, I didn't think he was gonna end up with her. I was like, this gold digger. Like, I was hoping he would end up with the girl that was like rolling his garments and stuff. She seemed
Yeah.
down. I was like, dang, gold
Yeah,
diggers.
because
Yeah,
they were like
the,
in the struggle together. Like she knew
yeah.
what was going on. I thought it was kind of interesting because when we first see the chain, or like they say like, oh, he's making really good money or whatever. When she says, I don't think it's great for a young man to be in the city with that much money. At first I thought like, oh, like she's afraid he's going to get robbed.
Me
Like,
too.
they're like, so what's she going to go do? Protect him from getting robbed? Like, I didn't really get it until the scene was over. And then I was like, oh,
Yes.
no, she's going to protect her bag.
Yep.
No, I felt that vibe, that conservative 1920s vibe. Yeah, you better go protect your bag, sis. Like
You got it
immediately.
right away.
Yeah, I felt like immediately. I could see, I mean, the way it was worded was strange, but I felt it, like just the
Yeah.
moms at that time encouraging their daughters to like get into something stable. Like, so
Yeah.
yeah.
It's
Makes
still
sense.
like that, right?
Yeah.
In some towns, probably, yeah.
Yeah, forever and ever is going to be like that.
How
All
about
right.
the scene with the kick me on the back of his in the chalk? That made me
Oh.
think of him. That's all I could think about in that scene because it's black and white. It was very, I was like, I wonder if when Fritz Lang wrote that, or I wonder if that's somewhat
Oh,
taken
wow,
from
that's
that.
a good point.
Wait, I have a question. Is this a silly gag, or did they actually, in this time, they will literally write "kick me" in officers and kick them?
No, not the officer, but
Or
I
was
don't
this the
think.
first time that was ever used? Is this the first kick me? Like that would be.
I was thinking that too. I feel like that had to be like a vaudeville gag. I
Yeah.
feel like that was like on tour throughout America. And because I feel like a lot of these gags, these guys are all like vaudeville actors and writers. I just feel like they're all pulling their what do you call it? Their stitch
Yeah.
from
That
what they have been doing for like the last 10, 20 years.
that literally made me think of the Animaniacs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
for sure.
What makes it more impressive also, even just the climbing, he's missing fingers in his right hand. He was doing a photo shoot and there was a table with props. And so he was gonna have like a prop bomb, like the or dynamite, and didn't, and somehow there was a mix up or whatever, and it was live or it was packed incorrectly, and so he only has like three maybe fingers, maybe not even the thumb. Maybe, yeah. And so I knew this, and so I was paying attention. And yeah,
Hmm.
you can kind of tell like when it's far away, it's more a glove type of thing. Yeah, it's really interesting that he was able to like strength, and he's like missing fingers. So he
What a
was
nightmare!
yeah,
The
Yeah.
show must go
and
on.
yeah,
Cut to Alec Baldwin, like,
Yeah, man, this dude blew his hand off in a photo shoot.
yeah, trying to be funny,
Wow.
right? Oh, like oh yeah, let me get a fake bomb from the prop, and just
I'm glad it didn't kill him, because then, we'd
yeah,
never see this movie.
for
Right.
real.
yeah, I wonder about the
Well,
budget of this movie because they didn't change costumes at all, except for the main girl, like the girl, I think they called her. At the end, she had like a white dress on. Otherwise, everyone wore the same outfit the entire movie. Whatever they had on, that was their, the really cool roommate's hat, like all of their different garb was the same
I
throughout.
considered that as well, and I was like, it's probably a budget thing, but it's also probably a turn of the century kind of thing where
yeah,
everybody's poor. Like people don't have money unless you're like, Rockefeller Wall Street people. You probably don't have more than one outfit. You know what I mean?
But
yeah,
also in
One
a
pair.
silent film, when you can't hear what the person's saying, it's easy to mix characters up probably as well. I was wondering that too. And like, I feel like they pronounced that
Oh
girl
yeah.
so much in the movie and I think she even wore the same hat with the white dress. So I wonder if they have to tag people in silent movies more often so that you remember what's going on for continuity's sake.
That
I
probably
think
makes sense.
so. And I mean, that's the thing in cartoons, right? Always wearing the same outfit, like The Simpsons, or unless, like once a cartoon or whatever gets more popular or whatever, then you like change outfits, right? Then you can play with it. But the same thing with stage plays, right? For the most part, and you had the drunk attire, right? That's the whole thing. Also with Chaplin, it was like a mix mash of characters was his outfit. So I think it's the same. And there was a drunk in this movie as well. That kind of he was an ongoing thing, and then he gets stuck in the net, and he can't figure out how to get out of the net.
There's always a drunk.
Oh,
Yeah, always a drunk.
we never talked about the mouse falling on the toupee and then he kind of falls and then the gun points out the window and then the light goes off and it smokes and he thinks they shot at him.
Oh, I'm glad you brought the mouse, right? Because that's such a gag that's been done, like putting a mouse in someone's
Sure.
dress or in pants, and so it's like, is this the first one? Because then I'm like, is this vaudeville? Were they doing like kind of like that kind of stuff already then, or yeah, like so many watching movies this old makes me think like, was this the first time? Is this when we first saw this?
Yeah.
And going to the clothing, I'm Marina, that you brought up the girl. There was so many gags there in the clothing thing. Even just boom. Because I don't know. I think we've all worked retail, so like nothing has changed in 100 years. Of just like, oh no, let me see that other one. Oh no, and it's like it's closing time, and it's like, nope, gotta help the last person. And like more, and then actually the first one, I like that one, and so he's like, okay, I'm gonna make a sale at the very least. And she's like, I just want a sample.
It's another
I
time.
worked at a deli counter, and it was the same shit. People were like, I need you to open a new thing of cheese. I was like, okay, and they're like, oh, I just want a sample. And I'd be like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. Um, so, and then you see him like throw everything back at the counter, and he's always ducking and hiding and trying to follow like the cart to not get lost. And then, sure enough, there's so many gags of him either grabbing onto a cart or something, thinking that it's going one way and it starts going the other way, or trying to hide behind the whatever cart it was, and he continues, and the other cart goes the other way. Um,
It's almost like there's like a formula throughout the movie
Yeah.
that they kept following and saying like, how
Yeah.
can we fit that into this scene?
Yeah, it
Yeah,
definitely felt like that. I mean, I think, I don't even think it was light. I think you're right. I think that's what it was. There's definitely a formula to how they put this thing together.
First shots of parkour, huh? Jumping around, like especially the friend when he's first being chased by the cop. That's why he gets the idea. Then he's a jumping and whatever, and I also really enjoyed at the very end, like just and I guess when you're doing stuff without sound, you think about it and you see so many that they took the time at the very end where he sees his friends still being chased by the police, like but like just roofs and roofs away, and the friend still's like yelling at him like I'll lose him. I'll get him to lose my tail, and I'll be right back. And the lettering is tiny, like distant. So like it gives you that joke as well as like someone's yelling, but it's so far away. So when they show the writing uh, card, the card of the lettering, it's so tiny and it's like a different print and everything. And I just like that kind of like small little extra nudge of like this is another chance to have a laugh. And the very last shot, if I'm not mistaken, when they're walking across the roof and there's a guy doing roof work and he walks on the tar and his shoes get stuck and then his socks get stuck and he keeps walking. And like I'm like, how many times do you do that to have it a perfect shot of shoes get stuck, I take my feet out, the socks get stuck, I'm still able to take my feet out and my feet don't touch the tar and get dirty. Like that to me was so impressive. I don't know if you guys noticed that
It
at the
was
very
Marvin
end.
Home Alone, right? Like that's Marvin Home Alone. He does the same exact thing where his shoe gets stuck, and then that's totally.
Wow.
The shots were amazing.
Is it?
Yeah.
I know, but Marvin Home Alone, the same thing happened. He comes in the window, and then his shoe gets stuck. Then his other shoe gets stuck. His sock gets stuck. His other sock gets stuck.
Oh,
It's
I
the
guess I
second.
didn't realize that.
Sticking up.
I guess I didn't realize. I didn't realize that his socks also got taken off.
Yeah. There's just
All
so
right.
many things. I wonder how much, like you said, is vaudeville. Do you think there's like a writer's room when they're making this?
Yes. So me and Dina were watching a movie some time ago. It was an older film, and we were talking about like, well, who wrote this? That I think it was a Buster Keaton film. Like, did Buster Keaton write all of this? But then, as we did a little research, we found out that he had like maybe 2 or 3 writers that was working with him, and they were all vaudevillian actors, and they're basically just like giving their bits away.
Yeah, he
Like
worked a lot
writers.
with.
Yeah.
He worked a lot with a dude named Hal Roach, and like so the story is by him. But I imagine like the a lot of the gags, especially if they were like vaudeville people, they had the same gags over and over. Um, that's so I imagine they have someone working on the stories, and then he would come in. Like it says he's uncredited as a writer, but I'm like, they're probably coming up with bits on the spot, right? And let's do it. Let's change it out. Yeah. Again, it's just super impressive overall of what he accomplished in this film, but for his career as a like silent and comedian silent star, that it's kind of historically known that the majority all got screwed and ended up super poor. He was the opposite. He was like super successful, and then even kind of had a second wave of films where like kind of redid a lot of the same bits, which is something kind of like Jackie Chan. Like all his movies that he did in Hong Kong that were done cheaply, and he could do the same stunt over and over just to get it perfectly right. In Hollywood, he doesn't get that same allowance, if you will. But it's like the same gags, only that it's filmed differently now, and it's like things are cheated with camera angles and stuff like that. But it's Jackie Chan doing like, I did these 10 stunts back in the day. Now I'm just gonna do them again, and it was kind of like that back then. I was like, oh, silent film, we're gonna do this. 10 years from now, we're gonna, because it's not like people, especially pre-TV, it's not like people would remember the gags or even remember the movie. So there was a lot of rehashing the same bits. with that, unless anyone has anything else, maybe let's jump into
I
final
got
thoughts.
something else.
All right.
So I wanted to give you guys the budget of this film in 1922 or 23 when it was shot. It cost $121,000 to produce this film, and it actually did very very well. It was a blockbuster hit. It grossed $1.5 million on a $121,000 budget, so it did very well. And a little research led me to learn that Harold Lloyd, of all the silent film stars, he was by far the most successful as far
Yeah.
as like money and production. So like we automatically think, oh, Charlie Chaplin, but Charlie Chaplin was probably the best. Like he probably, because he had the best bits and was funniest and the most memorable and had the most publicity and he was the biggest star. And then you got like
Worldwide
Buster
star.
Worldwide. And then you got
Yeah.
Buster Keaton, who had these huge, gigantic, like memorable Hollywood stunts and, had a very long career. But Harold Lloyd produced the most movies and made the most money. And
Yep.
we never talk about him. And I think this is the first movie of his I've ever seen.
Yeah. But that's the thing. I saw that because he owned everything. Once they were starting to do reruns, or when they were, he's like, know your worth, right? He's like, I'm not like, you want to show my pictures, like, pay me. So it's almost, it was towards the end, there was a little bit of a double-edged sword in that not a lot of people remember him because he wasn't just giving away his film. Like he was like, if people want to watch my movies, like I'm gonna still get paid. Whereas like Charlie Chaplin owned, his stuff, but he was on a whole nother level. And then he was able to fund his movies just from Japan releases. Like Japan paid Charlie Chaplin insane amount of money for his films that he was able to just from that take as many shots as he wanted. And Buster Keaton, all the other ones, like the production companies, Buster Keaton had his own production company, and he was bought out by a studio, or he made a deal, like a co-production deal that ended up basically backfiring on him, and he kind of lost all power. So yeah, it's sad that not as many people know about him because yeah, looking at it is like he made a bunch of money. Like he was well off. He didn't have to like worry, and he's not really known other than you see the gag. Like all his gags are around, and it's like, oh, this is where it came from.
Right.
And how much is that money in today's day? Because that already seems like a shit ton of money. If like if $1,000 to climb a building, not only that, his friend was gonna do it for $500, right? And so and the food was 50 cents or whatever was that meal. I
So
kind of
yeah, he'll climb to heaven for 500.
yeah.
I usually do the conversions for us. I did not do it this time around. I'll get our conversions before we're done.
All right. Okay, so
Well,
let
even on some simple
go.
math, what is he making? Like $15 a week. So
Yeah.
like it times 15 times 52 is 780. So like yeah, it was over a year's salary basically for an entry level
And
worker.
not only that, it was $15. Rent was $14 that he was supposed to split with a buddy. It's literally one room.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Maybe
yeah.
that was monthly pay then. I don't
And
know.
he's spending all that money on a hubby.
I don't remember how much it cost, but I remember like the rent was due in 2 weeks, or it was 2
No, he
weeks
was 2 weeks
behind, or
behind. 2 weeks
okay.
behind, and it was $14 a week, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Or they
Wow,
just own, yeah.
that's a lot.
So that's why when he showed that he got the money from pawning the
No, it couldn't have been
phonogram,
$14 a week. It couldn't have been because he only made 15.50 or something, right?
I know. Well, that's the whole point. He's horrible at money because
He was
he
splitting
doesn't
it.
have the money to spend on the jewelry, or because he can't afford his rent or food. and that's why he was splitting it with his buddy. You know.
Okay, so I don't know how much. Well, I'll figure out how much a dollar was in a second. But the production budget in today's money would have been $2.1 million. So this was not a cheap movie to make by any
No.
stretch of the imagination. But what they end up making on the movie would have been about $26 million. So that's good. He made people rich.
Hmm.
And so a dollar adjusted for inflation today would be about $17.65.
That's cool.
So there's your
Yeah.
math
For
Sounds
today.
about right.
for today.
Who knows today?
Today, can we
Today.
go back
So that
then?
breakfast was 50 cents, right? So that means that breakfast would have been like what? $8.25 breakfast?
Well,
And
Denny's
that
breakfast.
was a like a
Yeah.
taster or something like that. It wasn't even like
It wasn't
that's
It was a
how I
sample.
understood it. Yeah,
No,
it
that
was like
was the sample for the window. But that was a lot of food for $8.25.
Americans and their portions.
I have a little
And
question, kind of
yeah,
aligning with the wardrobe scarcity. Am I going crazy, or was there people who played multiple characters? It seemed like the guy who was driving the fancy car was also like the ambulance driver, and I think I
Mhm.
saw him one more time. Um,
I didn't
but
it
He
could
could have
be. I
been.
mean,
Now that you mention it, the ambulance driver might have also been the cop.
maybe, yeah. I thought that too, just with like a more on his face. Because I was trying to look at the IMDb credits, and I'm like, how accurate is this really going to be from the 20s? But I didn't see a lot of people. So
There's not. Yeah.
no.
yeah.
Well, no, but I mean, they all kind of worked with the same cast, right? That's like if you kind of see even like Chaplin, the bad guy, you normally had the same crew and stuff like that. So I imagine it's very likely that it would be people playing multiple characters, but
Cool.
I'm not entirely sure who, exactly. Um, but yeah. Anything else, guys? On that note, you've been a little quiet, I think, El Professor. Let's start your final thoughts.
Yeah, so this silent movie, is everything I expected in a silent movie. It had, we didn't even talk about the horns and the orchestra music playing, especially in the most vital scenes at the end, the most suspenseful. It had that, right? And it had like the slapsticky moments, which I was expecting. I did not expect how many homages later on I've seen that kind of go back to this film. And also, it's clean fun. This movie's totally clean. I could let my 4-year-old daughter watch this just like I could let her watch some Looney Tunes. I really, really enjoy that aspect of it. And I guess I would be interested to watch a couple more silent films just to see, the differences and the nuances. I've never seen a Buster Keaton one. I do want to echo Marina at the beginning. I didn't want to jump in on her, but I agree with what she said. At the very, very beginning, I was trying to watch this while laying down, and I noticed myself like drifting from it. So then I waited and then watched it when I was sitting up later in the day, and I was like, I just to get into the movie more. But once I got into it, I really got into the story. And again, there's no real words. Even the amount of dialogue that is written for you isn't probably on 3 to 4 pages. So I really enjoyed the film, and I would definitely check out at least a couple more silent films to just kind of give a basis or a point of comparison.
Very cool.
Nice. I just on the hardest thing to read was the actual letter. When they hand the letter, I just thought like, oh, they're gonna show like the written thing on its own thing, and then it's just like a zoomed in of like old timey kind of cursive, and I'm like, man, I haven't practiced cursive since second grade. Like, what does it say? And it was for the people that have seen more silent, it was really intricate and like nice pictures of like the calendar months kind of flying away in the inserts that because all I remember are normally what you see from Nosferatu or whatever, that it might just be like a squiggly line and then the whatever words are on there. But this seemed like almost every time they had a slightly different artwork and stuff like that, depending on the emotion or what was being said, that I thought was very cool. That I'm not accustomed of seeing in other silent films. All right, Steve, final thoughts.
Final thoughts. This movie is very fun. This movie is very cool. This is a time in cinema that I actually enjoyed. And in a way, I do wish we did have more movies of this type of genre now. And I don't know, in the more, I guess, advanced way of doing it. Um, but in a way, I know that era is more than likely never ever coming back. And I was a big fan of just all the effort that requires to make such a film. Because to me, that's really how I kind of fell in love, I guess, with comedic type movies. It was more of like when there's like constant gags running in the movie. And
Hmm.
it's like if one doesn't necessarily hit you, there's gonna be another one that's gonna hit you. And just like Jason said earlier, I really enjoy how it built the tension because I'm telling you, I never ever, especially not an old movie, I never like cringed before. But when I saw those birds attacking him, I almost lost it. I almost lost it. And yeah, and it was a very fun film. And also, it's a difficult film for the newer generation to appreciate because I also had to rewatch the movie actually because I will find myself in certain moments either drifting off because I was watching it too late or too much between watching some of the movie and then on my phone. And then I will miss something and then I'll have to rewind it back. So it's a movie you definitely have to pay attention because the moment you drift off for like a minute, you miss a big chunk of what happened.
Mhm.
So you have to be paying a lot of attention. And I don't know if at least the newer generation has the attention span to watch this type of movie. But definitely for people that are like more into old movies, appreciative of like old type comedy, Chaplin style, definitely recommend.
Cool.
Very cool. Marina, would you like to go next with your final thoughts?
Sure. Yeah, so overall, it was kind of cool to watch an older film. I definitely haven't probably watched one my whole life. No, I'm just kidding, in a very long time. And it was a different experience, once I focused and like aligned with the plot, it was enjoyable. Don't know if I'm gonna watch any more. But but I'm glad that I did something different and it's like the 100th year anniversary of the film, so it was kind of cool to support that, like, and
Yeah.
to really reflect on how far we've come and like but also like what they were able to accomplish. Like we talked about angles and just like being able to feel that intensity with like such older cameras and props and ideas. So it definitely felt great to support it, but I have too much ADHD for that genre. So yeah, but thanks for showing it to me. I never even heard of him at all.
Very cool. Well, thank you. Uh, Jason?
Thank you. You know what? I second everything Marina just said. That's what cinema club's about. Sometimes we get presented with these movies that like we're like begrudging to see, and then we learn so much, like not only about film but like ourselves as well. And this is one of the movies. I'm gonna be honest with you. I wasn't super excited to watch. I'm not a huge silent film fan. It's like I said, it's my least favorite genre, but I really enjoyed this thing. Would I watch it again? I might actually watch this movie again. Who would I recommend it to? I would recommend it to anyone who is a I won't say a comedy snob, but I'll
Hmm.
say someone who's like almost a comedic historian, someone who like loves comedy so much and wants to know where everything came from. Most of the gags that you're still watching on your favorite sitcom today came from movies like this 100 years ago. This is a really great movie that we are watching at this time. Also, because we are celebrating 100 years of this particular movie, and that's rare. Also, this movie came out on April Fool's Day, 1923. So this movie came out 2 weeks ago, 100 years ago. That's crazy to even think that we've
Mhm.
had like cameras and moving cameras for that long. That's insane. Um, Historically, I like this movie also because I basically live right down the street from where it was shot. This is a nine. It was 980 South Broadway. The building is still there. Like it's still a functioning building, which is incredible. You know, that street is still bustling. It just had its ups and downs, but it's still as bustling now as it is in the movie, which is crazy. Um, so yeah, there's a lot to learn from this movie. I think if you're a comedian, I would recommend it to kids too. Like, so one thing that I would disagree with you guys with is that everybody kind of feels like, oh, the new generation may not be able to sit through this thing. I am one of the people who had difficulty sitting through it up front, only because like I paused it a couple times because I'm like, oh, I need to do something else. I'm like, oh, I gotta go back and watch the movie. I gotta go back, you know. But it wasn't that I wasn't able to pay attention to it. I just came to it with a few other things on my plate. What I will say though is that once I like focused and freed myself up to actually like participate in the movie and I got off my phone the same as you guys, because I did miss some things and had to go back once I like decided to like actually put my phone away and watch the film, only reason I had my phone out, I'm gonna say this, the only reason I had my phone out is because it was a silent film, or like I've seen silent films before where you don't miss much. There's like a lot of nothing happening on the screen for long periods of time. This is not one of those movies. This movie's fast and it's moving fast, and there's always something happening on screen that leads you to the next thing. And if you miss one scene of this movie, you're going to miss a gag because that's how many jokes are in this thing. So I would say I would recommend this. Just like Chris said, I would recommend it to even children. I think kids maybe. I mean, I don't have kids, so I don't know if a 4 or 5 year old will watch it. But I feel like at a certain age, with a parent next to you, sort of like maybe walking you through it, you can definitely enjoy this as a family. You can enjoy this with your kid. If you really love comedy, I would recommend this to you. If you're a historian of good cinema, if you love silent film, you'll love this. If you like a lot of pratfalls, if you are someone who doesn't even understand English, if you are an international person, this is a great movie to watch because most of it's physical comedy, and physical comedies travel all over the world very easily. That's who I would recommend this to. And yes, I would probably watch this again. I had a good time.
Nice. All right. I guess I'll go with my final thoughts. I just thought of it when you guys were talking about. Steve was saying the whole birds thing was the one that got him. For me, it was when they throw him the rope, but it's not tied because the
Mm.
cop comes. I was like, oh my god! And it made me think of one of the things, and I don't know if it's because of this or not, but in Indiana Jones 2, when they put the girl in the cage and it's dropping down into the fire, it's a lot of that, right? Like Indy going and like stopping it and starts to bring it up, and then he gets taken off of it and she starts falling. And yeah, so it's like you see a lot of these gags even when it's not in a comedy, right? Like you can see a lot of those gags. I didn't know you guys felt that, strongly about silent movies. But yeah, I mean that can be really tiring. But yeah, this one I was just surprised from the get go. So it's definitely one that I would probably watch again. We didn't talk about the music at all. I forgot to look at. Sometimes it's whether Criterion or whoever then owns the film, they add music, what they think might have been what it sounded like. Because Harold Lloyd owned all his stuff, I would imagine that he knew exactly what was played for the movies at that time. So I imagine it's pretty close to what it would have been when people watched it. But that's its own other thing. I would recommend this to people that are into comedies and again, pratfalls, gags, any of that kind of stuff. I would. This is one that I would love to go watch. Like, and hopefully in LA, they're always, putting the old films back in theaters, whether it's a Lawrence of Arabia or whatever. And like, this is one that I would love to see, like, with a audience, just like where people are reacting, especially like, right. You have your Gen X in there, and your millennials, and your Gen Z, and everyone's kind of gonna react at what point in the film, or is it just gonna be, kind of all cross, just you know, no lost in translation, because everyone, it's such simple yet complex gags that work every single time. So yeah, I enjoyed it. I hadn't seen it, and again, I'm gonna go probably. Jason, sorry, buddy. I'll probably have some more Harold Lloyd movies on in the living room next time I'm up there. So yeah. With that note, Jason, you got a question for Steve?
It's funny you should ask, Dino, because I do have one more question for Steve. Steve, what do you got for us next week?
Next week, oh my God. Oh my God. Why you ask me? I'm not the person that's going next week. It is the one, the only, El Profesor.
What?
So I'm no longer going to pick movies. I'm going to let you guys choose your own destiny. I think that's the way I'm going to go. So we're going to go 3 movies today. You can pick 1, 2, or 3. I don't know what order Steve put them in, so I'm going to let him drop them on screen. The first one is 8.5. It's a Fellini picture. It influenced the Bardo, which we previously watched. This is a pretty out there movie. I've not seen it, but I've read a lot of reviews and heard a lot about it. So that's our first choice. Number 2 is The Machine That Kills Bad People. This is from 1962. It is considered a classic. It's a TCM classic. It can be found on HBO Max as well. And then the third movie I threw in there, it's going to be black and white, but it's not quite as old. Just in case people are down for it, we have Memento. So I figured I'd throw it down to you guys. You can choose 1, 2, or 3, and we'll see where we're headed next week. I'm not taking.
I gotta say, I love that you chose 3 black and white films.
Memento black and white, because I don't remember it being black and white.
Isn't a lot of the scenes are black and white, aren't they? I thought it was black and white.
It's no. Memento, if I remember correctly, Memento, like the flashback scenes are all in black and white, but there's a lot of flashbacks, so it's half black and white.
Okay. I was gonna say, I'm like, has it been that long?
About the movie till we get to. No, I'm just kidding.
I was just trying to figure out. Okay. Can you put them up again real quick? Just to it's 8.5.
Number one was 8.5.
Okay.
Number 2 was The Machine That Kills People. Number 3.
No. Kills bad people, Jason.
Oh, kills bad people, not just people, bad people. Number 3, Memento.
And they're all talkies, huh?
Yes, and I'm not going to vote. That way we have a clear winner unless you each vote 2-2.
All right. So, Chris, are you Chris is the tiebreaker. Should there be one?
Yeah.
All right. So you guys, everybody got what they're going to pick? We'll go on the count of 3.
And then we'll, Marina, we'll just hold up our fingers, either 1, 2, or 3. So. All right.
All right. So on 3, 2, 1.
Steve?
Oh,
you're the worst.
He did that on purpose. Steve, you do this every time.
You can't do that.
Well, it's on you, El Professor. What are we watching?
Professor.
You're the tiebreaker.
Let him pick. No, he's gonna pick The Machine That Kills Bad People.
I was thinking of doing it. Since Marina's brand new, and Marina, if you're gonna come back next week, we'll watch Memento. You think we'll get a chance to see it again?
Oh, there you go.
Oh, now I'm on the spot. Okay.
There you are.
Yes, I'll come back.
Awesome. All right, so next week we will be watching Memento.
All
There we
right.
go.
Very
So,
cool.
for Marina, El Professor, El Don Dino, Jason Echoes, me, Steve Destiny, we'll catch you next week. Bye bye.
Bye bye.